Hello, folks. Good morning or afternoon.
Hey,
Hey, Tahi.
hi everyone.
Hey, Pooja. Nice to meet you, sort of.
I'll have to drop in like 40 minutes. I have to take a flight. So
All right. Well, we'll miss you from the end.
yeah.
How was your summer?
Very good. Been to two places. Been on PTO for like 3 weeks. Not continuously, like 1 week, then 1 week of work, and another 2 weeks. That was quite fun. Relaxing.
I think I finally got myself unmuted. My mute button, my hardware mute button is locked. It doesn't unmute anymore. It only mutes.
How's everybody doing? You guys can hear me, right?
Yes. Hey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey there.
So silent.
Actually, I just got kicked out. I don't know if I.
Maybe
Yes,
maybe this is how the changing of the guard happens. You just get kicked out of Zoom one day.
Hey,
silently get your accounts removed.
I don't know whose guard is picking that up because it ain't me. If that's what you mean. So
yeah, it's also not letting me claim host. Usually, well, hopefully it's getting recorded here.
are you logged in? Sometimes Zoom does some weird things with logins and things.
Yeah, I'm by default logged out recently. I don't know how that happened. Does everyone already have the new Slack UI?
No,
I don't like it just because it switches.
It's
depending
weird,
on
right?
what workspace I'm in.
I don't have it yet, but all
slow.
my colleagues are like freaking out. And everyone's like, what the hell? I only have it on my phone, but on the phone it's okay. It's not like that weird.
I appreciate what they're doing with the focus mode thing because I definitely live in Slack hell some days.
Yeah.
I'll give them. They did the update to how they do laters and like saved things was a solid update. But I feel like sometimes people just get bored and they want to change things.
Good thing that doesn't happen to platform teams.
Definitely not. Everyone needs to run their own Kafka.
Yes. Especially Kafka.
Or Elasticsearch, that too. You know, just pick your poison. Everyone's
Anything
had
that's
a
painful.
bad experience with one of those.
All right. Well, we're at 11:04 here. The notes again. But let's go ahead and get started. We like to start off, open the floor, especially if you're new. Jump on for a minute, don't mind, and share what you work on and how we can help you support us.
There's a lot of background noise.
I think, Sahi, I think you may have background noise just based on where I see microphone access. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks. So, yeah, Stuart, I saw you came off mute, so you want to go first here? Love to hear a little about you.
I'm Stuart. I saw the talk that Abby did last week, so I thought I'd come and have a nosy about what you're up to. So I run a platform team in a company here in the UK called Global. So small team, always too much to do. and as much as anything, hard to get investment and to talk about what we do and why it's a good thing. So potentially some of what you're doing sounds interesting to help with that.
Awesome, thanks. Anyone else? Pooja, I haven't met you yet. Do you want to say hello?
Happy to. Yeah, Puya, my name. I'm the VP product of Giant Swarm. Been in the space for like 9 years, working with platform teams for 6 or 7 out of that, I guess. Yeah, and also just been added a few months ago by a fellow CNCF ambassador to the platform maturity model as an operations lead. And I've been always like keeping an eye on this work group, and finally got a chance to join, and I'm like, yes, that's lots of fun. Meetings have been amazing. Group has been amazing. Learning a lot.
Thank you for joining, and thanks for, I know you've been writing in some of the maturity model details docs, so thanks. Anyone else? I don't want to put too many people on the spot.
I can say hello to Josh. I know we connected on one of the adoption calls last week, but my name is Matt Minzensky. I'm in the US at Payit in Kansas City. We're a company that does software platform for constituents and governments interacting more effectively. So I'm over our data team and our platform engineering team. I'll talk more, I guess, at the next meeting. I've been talking with Abby about that, but nice to meet everyone. Nice to be connected.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And I saw you put down for the next meeting to tell a little of your story. That'll be awesome. We appreciate that. We're always trying. We're trying to get a little groundswell on that to hear, real world stories. So.
Sounds like Stuart might be up for it on one of the ones coming up as well. Brian, I think, is this your first meeting as well?
It's not. I stuck my head in a couple of the other ones, but I'll
I apologize.
Hi, everybody. Brian. No worries, no worries. I think it was my first main call that I haven't watched on YouTube. So, hi, everybody. Brian Liberty. I work in security, but specifically container and cloud platform management, both internal and external, and at a global financial services company that I'll keep out of it so I don't get in trouble. Yeah, so like some of the others, I saw some stuff online and I've been following CNCF and what you guys have been doing for a while, and this looked like a great opportunity to get involved and maybe help also use some of the outcomes of this to as a stick to fix some of our internal teams and what we don't think they're doing right too. So I appreciate the opportunity to help out where I can.
Thanks for joining. Yeah, it's definitely one of our goals is to support end users in convincing their organizations to adopt platforms. And it's really good to have folks, when we say end users, that's a CNCF term for like non-vendors, I guess. So but it's great to have folks here that can make sure we're actually meeting those needs. Okay, so I pasted the notes into the chat if anybody has items to add, but our main agenda items today, we're going to hear from Michael Luskin about his initial work on a platform as a product paper. And then we'll Abby and me a little bit, we'll talk about where we're at with the platform maturity model. There are a couple smaller items that follow that on the agenda. So yeah, I guess with that, Michael, if you're okay, I'll just turn it over to you and you can share as you'd like.
Thanks, Josh. So Oliver, who's based in Sydney, and I have been working on a draft of a platform as a product paper. It's very much a working draft that we just opened up, and I'll link again in a thread below in Slack that's open for contribution. The idea behind it is to be primarily focused at platform leaders, business leaders in the company, to articulate the relationship between product thinking, what it means, how it's operationalized, and platform outcomes. The idea being that it should be treated as a strategic, kind of holistic investment that moves the needle on the business in a big way, but breaking that down into like what do those component parts actually mean. The big thing with this paper, though, is the research component. We want to get real world examples from how this actually plays out, both the good and the bad, so we can essentially articulate like the patterns, the anti-patterns, substantiate the relationship between, treating the platform as a product and better platform outcomes. So to that end, there's a bunch of work ahead of us. The ambition of this paper is pretty significant. It's a lot of moving parts. One thing is getting feedback on the paper itself to make sure that it's the right tone, the right focus, the right structure. I expect that it's going to go through a lot of kind of iterations before we even get any of the research back, before we go through synthesis, before we incorporate any of that. And then obviously, once that happens, there's going to be a decent amount of more iteration. The goal is to get this in a presentable state by, I think, when is Paris next year?
March.
So definitely a few months before that, in a working state that we can clean up. So any kind of immediate questions before I get into the kind of next steps, what coordination around this might look like? What are the kind of pieces of effort around this paper?
I just want to say I'm super excited about it, and I'm super excited you took like a stab at it. So a little bit of context that we've talked about on and off at group meetings is around, we want more of these kind of deeper dive papers to come, like, to hang off of the higher level papers. So like the white paper being the highest level, the maturity model being an example of something that's a little bit more detailed, these being now even more detailed because they're sort of like implementations of things we discuss in short spurts on the maturity model. So yeah, super excited to see it coming in and being in this state. The only thing I'm hesitant about is March release, because we need to release them. We want them to be in a final state within about a month before the event. That gives us time to get it publicized, and we tend to go into formal review about a month before that. So that would put us in, like, we'd want to be in sort of like nearly finalized review state in sort of mid-Jan. And I think what we learned last year trying to do the white paper is just how hard it is to get things over the holidays. So
Yeah,
I just something to think about, but like we can try, right? We can set dates, and if we miss dates, we move dates. But like that's my only concern with what you've suggested. Otherwise, I'm super keen to see it come through. So
Thanks, Abby. Yeah, one thing I'd like to say is, I'd like to take credit for this being coordinated, like the original platform paper, the maturity model, and then this like nicely working together. But when we started working on this with Oliver, I didn't even know there was a maturity model paper, but they work really well together. Like they all tie into each other at different levels. This one is going to be the first, obviously, research-driven one. To that end, in terms of timeline, yeah, it's a little bit of an unknown for anybody who's done any research-driven work. There's a lot within our control in terms of like scoping it, giving it a timeline, working backwards. But in terms of recruiting companies, like we launched a survey, I think we only got 16 responses back. It's a starting point. We definitely need more. So that needs some dedicated love. And then actually, recruiting folks on the community end who want to, where we can align on this interview scripts to go out and conduct them in a pretty consistent way. So the feedback, is meaningful and valuable and can be parsed for insights. That's something that still needs a lot of active work. I just noticed hands. Is it Azari?
Yep, that's me.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that I understood the concept correctly. So it sounds like you want to give a more in-depth review of like different perspectives of like platform as a product across industries, or across, I guess, software engineering industry, but across different organizations and how it looks. And you want to add some like research findings and sounds like interviews within that process. Is that a good summary? Does that sound right?
Yeah. We want to establish the significance of treating your platform as a product. So everybody has a pretty, diverse set of experiences here of working in, consulting or companies on the platform side, and it's a mixed bag of, whack-a-mole to this is maturity model is a great way to frame that, right? The industry spans the gambit of that. So we want to explain and articulate to the actual decision makers in the company, kind of paint by numbers of why this is important. I don't want to go into like super detailed version of it now, but the idea isn't to be incredibly prescriptive in this paper. It's to outline like the philosophy and the principles behind this way of thinking, and then painting a path forward, not to say that it's the only path. And part of that is where the research comes in, right? We want to see what this looks like in practice, right? And Puya.
Yes. Yeah, super interested to help out. So with the interview part, you're aiming at more like a qualitative interview, not quantitative, right? So so more like in the numbers between 10 and 50, I would say, rather than an N of like a few hundred. Right?
Yeah, I mean, if we got 50 people, that would be incredibly ambitious, I would say. And broken down by consumers, builders, and then leaders. I don't expect we'll get senior leaders coming off of surveys. That's going to be more of a, and that's another talking point like that we need to work through, is probably recruiting from obviously network.
Yeah, I mean, I can bring quite a few to the table from our customer group. I would say, like I'm doing similar interviews right now, and I can just hooked onto them and like add some to your list, I guess.
Yeah, it'd be great. It'd be great to know what you guys are doing as part of this. But that's something we need to align on, like the scheduling.
But it's more like end user companies, right? That's what we focus on in here.
Yeah.
Right? Not vendors, right?
Not vendors.
That's good. Good. Like,
yeah.
The real value comes from the end users, right?
Yeah. And that's the idea, there's a rough draft of a builder interview, but this is, once again, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. It needs some focused attention. It's gonna, it takes a few iterations to get to a good workable script that asks the right questions and then proxy checks those questions without leading people. Like we need all of that interview goodness so we can get the insights we actually want out of
I
this.
used to be in academia, and qualitative interviews was part of my stuff, so I can definitely help out there.
that level of rigor is going to help.
We talked a little bit about that, Michael, about like putting together a template that we can all like know this is the process we're following for the interview. So yeah, that would be awesome if we can get it on paper and all be aligned. It'll help us run them too.
Matt, you said you're from academia as well?
Yeah, I actually dropped out of a PhD program in linguistics to work in software. So
beautiful.
It's been a while, but I have some experience with like
PhD dropouts,
IRBs, and similar.
Good club.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess, are there any other kind of high level? What's the point of this? What might it look like? What's the kind of rough timeline?
I guess I would kind of, I was hearing in what we were talking before, that we want to share the values of treating a platform as a product. And then Michael, I want to kind of, you said that we don't want to be prescriptive. I kind of wanted to ask, what is the goal? Is the goal to, like, I see that it can be hard to go from engineering to PM, like it's a different mindset. Is our goal to kind of help your typical platform engineer or platform team become, adopt that product mindset, learn how to become a PM? Is it to tell the story of, well, you should go and figure this out on your own, how to become a PM? So
yeah, good question. You mentioned before that part of the way that the kind of CNCF website is shaping up around all of the white papers is a kind of choose your own adventure depending on the persona of the reader. That's something I want to explore on this as well, because the way we kind of wrote it was slightly disjointed, which I am aware of in this paper, in that one narrative is from the bottom up, right? Because so often the power you have to change these things and these ideas come from engineering teams themselves, right? The reality is you don't often get executive sponsorship and like, we get it, you're empowered, go do amazing things. It's
That's why
people
we're all
fighting.
right? We've done this from the bottom up, and we're like, now we got to tell.
Yeah, it's the bottom up story of like, how do you kind of create that flywheel of like, if you show these better outcomes at a level that you can control, then you can, then it can go beyond your team, your org. That's one story that we can tell with this work. The other story that that no matter what I still want to tell is that top down, the connecting the dots for that executive or that business leader of why this matters, right? Like, why doing these things, even if you don't understand them at a deep technical level, of like why it makes sense for you to invest some of your political capital to empower teams to do this work because of what it does for the business, right? You can respond to things in the market if you have an amazing engine behind the work, but it takes this kind of thinking to build that engine. Sorry, I think Sahi or
just confirming. Thanks. I like that that you kind of got both in there, considering both angles. So thank you, Michael.
Yeah, and so that's one way we can do it. We can one way we can do this is not think of it as this like linear static paper that is read top to bottom. It's this we can package up multiple narratives depending on who the reader is because they're substantiated by the same insights, right? It's just a different way of telling the story, which I think is much more useful, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know how to raise it.
Yeah,
we use Chime in AWS, so is it like is one of the goals or is to have like some sort of best practices or like those kind of things? Because other than collecting users' stories and tell them in a linear way, like will there be a benefit of collecting? I don't know how this will complement to the maturity model, but like telling users what they should think about, what they should look after when building platforms based on, if and when we'll have 20.
Yeah, I'll answer these questions separately. So in terms of kind of focus on the work and being prescriptive, I don't have the answer yet. I think as we go through this iterative process, as we do the interviews, we'll get a better sense of exactly where we want to tote that line. What I definitely don't want to happen is to have this paper that presents like the definitive way to build a platform, because that would be insane. But the biggest value at the top is I would say like the philosophy and principles behind approach, right? The things that if you've internalized, you can operate on within your context. We don't know everybody's context, which is where the research comes in. We want to see how this plays out in different companies under different conditions to the best of our ability and see which patterns emerge, right? The patterns are the things that are going to help us shape what, I guess, the prescriptive side of it, right? A pattern that says like this is kind of a thing that plays out well in a bunch of companies that we talk to is probably something that raises to the level of it's an important thing for you to consider. Maybe not entirely prescriptive, maybe it is a hard precondition, but that's where the research component comes in. I'm sure like in this room we could sit down and we could just, based on our experience, map all this out, but then that's where like the draft of the paper comes in, and then let's see what people are actually doing in practice and how effective they are and what patterns, or Enki patterns they're emerging, right? Like we can guess at those things, but I also want to see like teams that do it horribly wrong and why. We know what that looks like. It's a little less interesting, but I want to include that in the paper. I want it to be known, like, if this is what it feels like in your organization, this is not how you get to this. Yeah. Any other hands, virtual or otherwise? All right. If you're interested in participating in this, I'm going to post just like a quick note in Slack. if you can just kind of raise your hand and give me your time zone, then I'll find a time for the most of us in terms of overlap to meet and spend like a dedicated hour and just like mapping out this whole project. If that works for everybody.
Yeah, maybe
Awesome.
maybe Michael, we should say, make sure you read the paper before you go to that
Yeah,
and be ready.
thank you.
I was almost going to ask you, Michael, if you wanted to do, although it might be too long, if you want to walk through the main headings now.
I could. It's a little long. I would say if everybody can kind of just take time to read it, speed read it, read the headings at least, that would inform the next conversation. But yeah, the paper basically follows, and somebody already pointed out, like, I read a few comments on like just switching around sections for readability. There's a lot of work that needs to happen, but the idea is that, why product thinking? What does it mean? What are the principles of it? How do you operationalize it? How does that tie into strategy, right? What do you need in terms of leadership and culture and all of that good stuff to like enable this then? Just reading commentary. Yeah, but I would say just read it. There's a lot of room for improvement in that paper, just to, as like a parallel process, just to get that into a good place, separate from the research track.
Yeah, I'm almost, there's 3 work items, or there's 3 tracks. There's the paper itself, there's running the interviews, and then I saw, Matt, you brought up in the thing, the survey framework, which we kind of rushed out, I guess, around KubeCon Amsterdam. There's room to iterate on that too, put it into a doc and think about how we can improve it, iterate on it, benefit from it.
Yeah, very much so. The survey kind of got launched relatively quickly and opportunistically as like a convergence of getting feedback around the platform paper / us wanting to recruit folks for this. So there's definitely room to just kind of focus on what we're doing now. All right. So yeah, read the paper, reply to the thread. I'll set up a time and then we can just focus on this. Thanks, everyone.
And sorry, Michael, when you say focus on this, what is the goal of the next session?
To align on like the tracks of work, who's going to own what.
Right.
And then obviously feedback on the paper is just open to everyone, whether you want to have a more active role in like leading a track of work. But yeah, this is way more. I mean, we 2 of us started this with the help of Josh and Abby to get this in the place where people could read it and it has some framing and structure. But obviously, that's early days, right? There's a ton of work here.
That's awesome. I haven't made it through the whole paper. I got partway through, but the 2 things that jumped out at me. One was that I think it's already been touched on here, which is the intersection with the maturity model. Like these things reinforce each other so well. So figuring out how to tie those things together, super great opportunity there. The second piece is that I think just my general feedback from trying to get my bearings in the document is that like what is it before you have product thinking here, right? There's pre-product thinking and there's product thinking. And I think when we've talked about the maturity models and the levels, like, to me, that's like the levels 1 and 2 are not sustaining. They're not platform as product yet. And so what are the kinds of things we see in those different stages? What is required to get from one stage to the other? And then, I think that the big jump, the chasm you're trying to clear here is the levels 2 to 3, where you're actually now incorporating platform as product. And I wonder if that would help to think about the paper and how you structure it, like, because I saw things like build versus buy, or what is your strategy for your platform, right? Those are things that I think are happening in those stages 1, and they're required to get you from 2 to 3, for instance. And so I think that, like, I don't yet know what this means to the paper, but that was my reaction to reading it.
We don't need the answer right now. That's a good question and a good lens on this, right? There is obviously the opportunity. The maturity model was running on its own. We didn't always pay the best attention to its development, but certainly it's something that we need to in this paper, right? That it can't be disjointed from the maturity model, or if there is some compelling deviation that has to be addressed somehow.
Totally agree. These things are better together.
Yeah.
And we,
Thank
to
you.
be clear, we did the same thing with the cloud data maturity model, and we did deviate in places intentionally, right? As you say. So you're not like, your hands shouldn't feel tied on this document, but it should be intentional rather than that, which is, I think everyone's on the same page. But I really like that, Marsh, that framing, and I think we should try and be like, that is one place where we could enable that mental connection for people of like, here are some of the experiences you may feel across the different dimensions of the maturity model pre-product thinking, and some of the dimensions that you need to invest into, and where you might be finding yourself on the maturity model as you invest in product thinking and so on. So I think that's I think that's a really good framing. Very cool.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thanks for driving this. It takes time, and appreciate the tenacity and that you're doing it this good way.
Thanks.
All right, so next on our agenda is the platform maturity model. Talking about the state we're in now and where we're gonna go next. Abby, do you want to start us off here?
Sure. So first of all, really big thank you. I've been a little bit MIA for a few days, so there's probably a lot of comments that are backed up. I apologize if anyone's waiting on me. I have some time set aside for today and this week to finally, or to get back into some of them. But like, genuine round of applause to everyone who has like managed to get an awesome set of details into each of these sections. So for those that haven't been as deeply into it, we went through a process in, I would say, basically June, where we tried to settle on the model itself, the like progression, the names of the levels, the progression across levels, the name of the aspects, those kinds of things. And then we sort of divide and conquered the write-up for that model. So, okay, we have this one word concept of investment at level 3 scaled, but like, what does that mean to people that in a consumable way? And we want to keep this kind of short and snappy intentionally, because we have people like Michael leading the charge on the detailing of what that means in practice. And so, yes, so very big thank you to everyone who's worked really hard on getting the detailed section in place. One of the learnings we had when we went through the table back in like June-ish time was that there's sort of this like diverge and converge situation that we have to do, where we get everybody sort of all the ideas out and clarity on alignment in intention. And then there's like, okay, now how do we format this thing in a way that has clarity in like, or consistency in ways? And the way that we did that on the table that I think worked well, but this is the chance to give feedback if it didn't, was that I sort of just like sat down with everybody's ideas and all the conversations from our big old like readout session, and then came up with a table and was like, now this is a like clean thing to comment on, right? It's taking ideas from everybody's different things and from our conversations and putting it into one place. As I said, so first of all, I got the impression that worked well, because I felt like I witnessed everybody still engaging. Nobody like disengaged and indicated in some way they felt not listened to in that first set of stuff. And it also felt like it gave us a bit of like a shared, like a thing to look at and share, versus when we're sort of iterating on things, it can be hard to know what is the current state of our thinking. And that's why I think there's a proposal now that we do the same thing with the details section. So I think Josh has offered to help as well. So Josh and I sort of take where we are at as like this kind of pieced together document and get it so it's in consistent formatting, and get it into GitHub, and do that as a way of saying, we've got all the information from the group here. Now it's a matter of like finalizing the formatting of it and finalizing the like wording of it and the delivery of it. So to summarize, I'd like to propose that we draw a line in the sand on all of the detailed documents for now, that Josh and I put our heads together to just make a consistent format and get that into GitHub for the start of like a 1 month like proper review of the paper as a complete thing. And this would enable us to review it also in sort of the format on the website. So you can like see how it would lay out and that kind of thing. How do people feel about that? Do people feel like their detailed sections are in a place where they're comfortable with that, or not? And yeah. We keep chat. By the way, there's going to be lots of comments to reply to as we do this. So I suspect there's still going to be a lot of back and forth this week as we get that kind of settled. But like that would be the goal, the target that we'd be moving towards.
I guess I could see, Abby, you and I needing to like chat with the folks that wrote one of the papers and finally clarify like if there's some points that haven't been finally ironed out, but that maybe we could do that. We can like check in
exactly
on the
exactly. So where it's just like, oh, we're going to make this into bullet points instead of sentences because then it's consistent across all the details. Like my feeling would be that would be safer to do without conversation because it would be taking the exact same content and just formatting it maybe slightly differently for consistency, where it's like either cutting down or expanding or not understanding or something. I would absolutely want to do that hand in hand with the people who wrote the stuff, and to make sure that we understand the context and and the intention of the thing so that we're not changing that as a part of this rewrite without a conversation to understand it better. Yeah, or this not rewrite, but consolidation.
It's my general sense that the sort of breakout topics are at different levels of like ready to go into GitHub. And so I think it makes sense to have a sort of check-in before you make the leap, because if there's like, certainly being in a Google Doc has made it easier for us to collaborate and talk, and that we will lose that to some degree when we shift.
Yeah, and so possibly there's a middle ground step of getting us doing it in the Google Doc so it's visible and commentable there with the direct intention to get it into GitHub soon, like ASAP, but doing so via getting Google in shape to enable those conversations a bit better across the detailed sections. Yeah, I think that seems like a good point for sure. Anyone else feeling like the detailed sections are in a spot where that makes this hard, or would recommend we do different timing or different approach?
We are getting close to not quite the deadline, but we want to get it done by beginning of November or end of October. Let's say it that way.
Yeah.
So we've got 6 weeks.
Yeah, we've got sort of a week, I think, to try and get it into GitHub. It would be my goal to allow for a proper month of GitHub review, which is the more formal, is where we start to like really make sure that tag people are aware of it, because it's been sort of deeply in the working group. We want tag people to be aware of it as well, and potentially also talk people and things like that. So that's why we want to give that amount of time where we're confident with it, but we want to get the reviews from a wider audience, basically.
Okay. So sorry, I thought I might have missed it. So us getting into GitHub, what does that actually mean, getting into GitHub? And that it sounds like it's opening up to a lot wider audience, but yeah, what exactly does that part entail?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's sort of a symbol. It's both symbolic and not. So getting into GitHub is getting it ready to go on the website. So it would be actually released on the tag website, which we might be able to get a link to. And that would be where it gets kind of popularized and linked to and all of that. Also getting into GitHub is where we would then have a sort of version controlled and kind of CNCF formatted document, which would allow us to go into like PDF printing with the CNCF itself and releasing via their kind of formal channels of like blog posts and things like that. And then, so that's why it needs to get into GitHub eventually for those technical reasons. One of the benefits of getting it into GitHub is that it is something that is widely used at the CNCF for these kinds of documents. And so we can start tagging people in to be like, please review. And that is something that they'd be like familiar and expecting, right? So and this is for like the tag, so tag app delivery. and potentially our talk or technical oversight committee kind of representative who may be able to help give it a once over and see where we connect into other CNCF initiatives, where we, and just give feedback there.
That makes sense. So if I'm understanding the next steps properly, it sounds like it's cleaning up the detail sections that we just kind of were covering, and then figuring out how do they sync up with like one another as well, and getting the format kind of similar on that. And then after we feel good about all of that, I assume we'll probably have like another meeting to confirm we feel good about all of that. Then we'll push it into GitHub, something like that.
Yeah, I don't have a, yes, so that's a good proposal. I don't think I knew what I want to do there yet, if I'm honest. But yeah, I think that the proposal from both Marsh and now you is like, GitHub's really helpful for, or I mean, sorry, Google Docs is really helpful for like the iterations and the understanding of things. So it sounds to me like there's an ask, a very reasonable ask, that we get the Google Docs in the into where we're happy for them to go to GitHub before we go to GitHub, and then it's like sort of a thumbs up-y, like we could put like a little thumbs up-y thing in our Slack channel for if everyone's cool, and then look to make that move. And the one thing I'll call out is we are going to at some point have to go. So what we'll be looking for when we do that is like a general, like we talked about in the June deep dives, like general travel of direction alignment. Like if there's something that you want to edit, like Google going to GitHub does not mean final. We expect there to still be pull requests. We expect there to still be discussions, but we just want it to be like that step towards finalization. And I think so there will be a time when we have to sort of say, does anyone think this is a bad idea and would like to like veto it going to GitHub, versus is everyone super happy and it's final in everyone's minds, and only then do we go to GitHub? Because there'll be a bit of a gray area there.
So Abby, we decided we're going to get the converged integrated model into one
Google
document,
Doc.
share that with everybody by early next week. I mean, let's say by end of next week, get that into at least maybe we could do a branch or something in GitHub if we prefer.
Exactly, yeah. And that's how we did it for the white paper. I think we do a branch and all that stuff. So yes, what we'll look for is to try and by early next week throw a vote into the Slack channel, which is an encouragement to go and read the compiled version, and let us know if you have any like strong reservations about moving forward with the review cycle. So by the end of next week. And have a look at, we'll be calling with questions, I'm sure, over the course of the next week while we do this. Super exciting though.
Yeah, in fact, I'll share. So a couple things. First, which is the first item on the next one, the other item. So it fits in here. Abby and I got a chance to present. I don't know if you all know, there's a group in CNCF, the end user groups, end user SIGs. They're forming now a new thing of them, tab, technical advisory board, but there's an existing one called the developer experience group. So we went and shared with a number of CNCF end user members the original paper, but also platform maturity model. Got a lot of good feedback. In fact, one of the comments I made in the doc today, we got some feedback about profit centers, platforms being profit centers, and some significant enterprises were like, yeah, that never is going to happen. So yeah, really good feedback there. So that's exciting. I also wanted to share, even internally at Red Hat, we're looking at this maturity model to do some research and learn how we can help customers. So already, even before we've published it, it's been helpful for folks. So thank you, everyone. Anything else on the maturity model that people want to bring up, or concerns, or?
This is Vijay here. Sorry for joining. It's like I had to another meeting and I just joined. So regarding the challenges at the different levels, which I was mentioning in the measurement section, do you all feel like that looks good to continue, or do you want me to drop it off from the report? I'm not sure if the context is not clear. I'm sorry if not. Maybe I can
That's okay.
share.
I think I mean somebody can answer if you want. For me, like I've read I think 3 or 4 of them pretty thoroughly now. I don't think measurement is still pending for me, but I will follow up with you when I get there. Somebody else wants.
Yeah. Especially the reason why I'm asking is that let me quickly share my screen and show it here. And yeah, the section what I'm talking about, right? I try to present it internally with a couple of executive leaders on this, and internally in the company. And then what I got as a feedback is that this seemed to be much more easier way to visualize, like what are all the challenges that we get at each level. So this is what I'm referring to when I say like could we continue this kind of model.
I personally also, this is a great segue because one of the things is like we don't have to be stuck to any exact form for these details, and in fact maybe they'll diverge further as we go, but I think we should be open to, like, in the details section for measurement, like if we've got a good graphic, let's put it in,
Okay.
each one, and we have to finalize that, and we can chime in on GitHub, but that was another one, like, real okay. So I'll say that in a second. So what do you think of that? Anyone else have thoughts on that? Yeah, I was just gonna say, sorry, to make sure I wasn't talking too much. In the adoption, which was the section I was leading, kind of, and Matt, thank you so much for your contributions there. We do have right now like a bulleted. We have the text at the top, and then we created a section called characteristics, where it's kind of bullet points, like, of things that you might see. And we even created a section called example scenarios, where we tried to put like a couple illustrative examples that even flow through all 4. Even if we can decide if we want to keep them in that one, but I was kind of thinking, like, it's not the worst thing if they're in one and not yet in the others. They could be added later. We could be a little flexible like that.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, I definitely don't think it has to be that everyone, it's like a cookie cutter across them all. But I would say that I think one of the things I've seen across some of them are this kind of like clear, concise examples that I think of like, or like content like this, like, and so bullet points or graphics or whatever, I think we can learn from each other as well, right? And that's where I'm saying, like, there might be a like reformatting of a detailed section that doesn't actually change the content, it just changes the presentation of the content, but then there may also be questions about the content, and I think those are 2 categories of information, right, or of change. And I think, yeah, we want to, I was definitely, I think I told you, please don't delete that mind map, because I think it's really useful there. So
Yeah.
I still stand by that. I think keeping that there, we'll figure out what the format looks like, whether it's a graphic or bullet points or whatever. I think that's really helpful to be there. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome. I think that's it from my side. Thank you.
Cool. So I think that's it then, Josh, I think for white paper, if we, and reach out if there's any other questions or concerns, find me on Slack, but otherwise that'll be our next steps.
Good stuff. All right, so the last kind of wrap up here, we mentioned that we talked to the end user SIG. The next one is, I just wanted to inform everyone, I need to kind of catch up, and I've told the tag leads and stuff, but I'll just tell everybody because it's coming up soon, KubeCon. So I wanted to share the state. The tag will have a meeting space in the morning on Monday. That was what was left, from 8 to 12. So we'll have a space from 8 to 12 at the convention center here in Chicago. Thank you all for coming to my town to visit. Yeah, so I that might be a tough time for folks to come, or we might be going to other things, but we particularly like to go over work that's going on in the working groups. So we'll for sure talk over the state of the platform. We'll basically have a meeting like this there, probably a lot shorter though, at least like half-hour update for each group. Yeah, and we'll try to solicit, what we've done in the past is solicit lightning talks on ideas or projects that are in the CNCF or might be coming open source. So look out for that. We'll try to get that formalized in the next week or 2, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. The other thing is we will have a booth, a project booth in the project pavilion. So alongside other like CNCF projects and tags and Kubernetes SIGs and all that. We'll have to put up a schedule, I guess, for people to volunteer to man it, to person it. And yeah, I guess we'll talk more about that, but it's, oh yeah, I was gonna say, even if you're not in charge, it'll be fun to hang out there. So please come visit us there. People come and ask about what we're doing, and we gather at user insights, we meet each other. It's a good spot. We only have it half a day, so PMs. I thought that, I don't know, we had a choice between AM and PM, and I was like, well, there's more people walking around in PMs, it's more informal, so we'll have it like during the booth crawl and things. Who all is coming to KubeCon actually?
Yeah,
Okay.
Josh, I had to reach out to you, and I almost until yesterday I was planning that I'm going to be there, but now it seems like things have changed this morning, so I'll talk offline about it.
Oh, okay, I was just curious actually. It
Yeah.
seemed like 4.5 folks raised their hand.
Is anyone also going to China? Because I feel so lonely going alone. No one? I'm always asking and no one's coming. I mean, I have a small group of speakers that I already know.
I don't know, is Vic? No, I don't know who we have from China. Hong Chao was on our group a year or two ago, and he's from China, but I haven't seen him for a while.
Yeah, especially like one doubt I'm looking is that in case if I had to come at my personal front, like what kind of things that I can do you have any CNCF has anything that I can use a reference or
Like for discounts?
Yeah.
We for sure can share the KCNA 23 meetup discount because for no less than
That's something at least in case, because this morning everything seemed to be changed, so I just want to be there at the personal front at least.
I think I also have a 15% discount that I can give out, but the meetup one is the same, I guess, right?
15%.
Yeah.
So I think, thank you. Anything
One other
else?
thing that's not, I don't think yet in the plans, I'll get a comment into that GitHub issue, Josh, but there's as another thing that people may want to do, and we maybe want to do opposite when we have the booth or when we have the booth intentionally near the booth, I don't know. But I ran into some people at Civo Navigate this past week who have sort of topics that relate to tag app delivery and the platform's working group that are patterns. So last in Amsterdam, we did some lightning talks at the booth that I think were amazing, and we can do that again. One of the things about those, though, they turned into a lot of people talking out, and there wasn't as much of an opportunity to talk like as a group because it was quite loud and a bit packed, like space wise. And so potentially what we could do is try and, like, once we understand the layout of the building, like snag a lunch table at a certain time of day outside of the core lunch hours or whatever, and try and set times that we can have like different talks. So the examples that came from my conversations were like secrets management, which came up during the tag meeting last in Amsterdam as well. Also the pattern of providing services as a platform, and the patterns of like working with custom resource definitions. There were a few patterns that people are seeing across lots of different products and lots of different like company needs and challenges and stuff. So yeah, I'll make a comment about that concept, and maybe we can try and organize that as we do our timings of other things. If people are interested in that, and if you have more topics that you're interested in, we can try and organize them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I mean, we had those lightning talks, but if we could put a little theme to them and make them a little more, yeah, that not as loud. I mean, I don't know what the actually, I do have a diagram, I think, from Red Hat on the layout maybe of the place, unless it's just copied from last year's. So maybe we could start talking about it soon. I'm happy to have your support, Abby. And anybody else that wants to help out. Yeah, the rest, it says website and prototype platforms, that just continues as is. Look at the issues. Leanne is working on our website, so if you have suggestions, write to her. We still think we still want to do prototype platforms, at least link to them from in the site somewhere, but that's still just a work in progress. So yeah, I think that's the last item on the. Oh yeah, somebody wanted to
Back
check.
to the maturity model stuff, just briefly. It sounds like when it comes to like syncing up on some of the detailed sections, like I know there's some adjustment that I need to make on the investment part. Josh, you added a really good comment earlier. That kind of like will fundamentally change it depending on direction that we go.
Right. Sorry, the profit and cost center. We got to talk about that.
Right.
Yeah,
We gotta talk about it. I think it's a really good suggestion. So is that just kind of like ad hoc, like send messages in the platform channel? Like how do we want to organize that?
Let's yeah, I guess we got to look at that a little carefully. I mean, actually one of the discussion with the end user SIG last week, that was the first piece of feedback I think they gave us. They were like, profit center, yeah, we wish. And this was a pretty big company that's pretty invested. So yeah, let's think about that. We got to work with USRA. Are there more folks? Yeah, maybe we should get on let's start a async thread maybe in the
that sounds good.
chat and then go from there.
Let's do that. Sorry, that was all.
Cool. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah.
I did see the ask to set up a meeting as well for one of the sections. I put it down as a do later. Which is for like this Thursday. There'll be a session on which section is that
Interfaces,
for?
I think Sahi was saying he might. Was
Yeah.
that when you're talking about Abby?
For interface, yep, exactly. So this Thursday, if anyone wants to talk interface, and I'm gonna get that up on the calendar as well. So yeah, it's a good chat.
Yeah, so we're still kind of open this week to if we need a meeting or whatever it is. Let's it's still open this week. All right. Any last comments? Cool. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Great to see the new faces, and thanks for your contributions. And see you online. See you next time. See you at KubeCon. Maybe. Have a good one.
Thank you, guys.
See you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
See you.